Hello and welcome to Whisky Sisters, the podcast.
I am
Inka Larissa.
And my name is
Jennifer Rose.
Join our weekly adventures as we rock the whiskey world. We will be bringing you whiskey-related news and gossip, discussing latest bottle releases, and of course, tasting our way through delicious drams.
We'll be hosting expert guests, hitting the road to visit some Scottish distilleries, and let's not forget dropping in some cheeky whisky facts.
A warm Whisky Sisters welcome.
In today's episode, listeners, we are sampling one whisky using different types of glassware, total experimentation to see whether the glassware actually changes the overall tasting experience.
We are sampling Brig from the Whisky Cellar, who is an independent bottler from Edinburgh. We've actually tried this one before, but not like really in a focused setting. It was just one of our random Instagram lives back from last year.
Yes, back in France. Was that in May, Inka?
Yeah, God, ages ago. That was probably our first ever live. I actually watched it back just recently as well. I seemed so nervous at the beginning. It's quite funny, but the setting was amazing.
Totally.
Anyway, so before we stick our noses in all these whiskey glasses, let's stick our noses into the latest whiskey news.
Stick your nose in it.
An independent fifth-generation company, Simpsons Malt has been granted planning permission in principle to build a state-of-the-art maltings with storage facility on the outskirts of Rothes in Scotland. So this new facility, it'll include malting barley storage space, it'll have annual production capacity of a huge 85,000 tonnes, which will mostly go to distilling customers in Speyside. Furthermore, this facility will create up to 40 jobs, according to the family-owned Simpsons Malt. And the barley that will be used for malting production will be locally grown by the farmers who are part of Simpsons Malt's agricultural merchandising division. Simpsons Malt have also achieved B Corporation status back in 2021.
A Scottish distillery is allowing customers to pay for a bottle of whiskey with time instead of money as a part of environmental initiative. Glencairn near Glasgow. Have you actually been to Glencairn? Just quick.
No, but weirdly, I'm like, when you can fly into Glasgow Airport, there's these massive billboards for Glencairn, and every time I walk past them and it's like, oh, so close to Glasgow, I always say, oh yeah, why have I not been there yet?
Anyway, Glencairn is giving fans the opportunity to get their hands on a bottle free of charge by spending a day volunteering with the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, WWT, carrying out crucial wetland sustaining activity. So if you head to Glencairn website, you can sign up. And obviously not everyone can volunteer, but they will choose a selected few to take part, and they will be invited to one of the 4 locations within the UK. And I actually went and had a look, and one of them is London, after which they will receive a bottle of whiskey. I think it was the 15-year-old Glencairn, and you also get invited to the distillery to do a tour. I was actually gonna sign up, but the date is 31st of March. So it's a bit too soon. I don't think I can make it.
Not too far. That's a lovely intention, isn't it?
Yeah, I quite like that idea. Glencairn will cover actually the transport costs to and from. That's quite handy as well. So even if you aren't located quite that close, they will look after you.
Loch Lomond Group has launched Noble Rebel, a new blended malt Scotch whisky brand available in 3 distinct expressions: Orchard Outburst, Smoke Symphony and Hazelnut Harmony. Matured in ex-bourbon casks, the Orchard Outburst malt contains whisky distilled with Chardonnay wine yeast. Smoke Symphony is finished in Rioja wine casks, with Hazelnut Harmony being finished in toasted American oak casks. All the no-age statement blended malt whiskies are non-chill filtered, natural in colour and bottled at 46% ABV under master blender Michael Henry at Loch Lomond Distillery, and they're priced at a reasonable £40 British.
Oh, sounds amazing. I'm quite intrigued by the hazelnut. I want to see how they bring those hazelnut notes.
And the Chardonnay wine yeast also intrigues me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also received an email recently from Andy Frazier, who is a fellow podcaster whose podcast is actually about cattle and sheep.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. So he wanted to let us know about his debut crime novel, The Master's Spirit. So what is the book about? There's been a murder. What do you think about my
I love your
Marta?
Taggart impersonation. For our non-Scottish television aware listeners, Inca is doing a rather fantastic impression of a famous fictional Scottish detective called Taggart, and his catchphrase was "There's been a murder." So good.
So, so when the body of a master distiller is found in a mash tun at Glenlachan Distillery, local copper Scott Donald finds himself among a web of lies from the local community in Kilrachn. Some of these places. I don't think these are real places, by the way.
Maybe fictitious places.
Yeah, on Scotland's west coast. The plot involves a Frenchman buying an old distillery in Scotland and modernizing it. I like the sound of this.
Totally, we must read that. As you know, I'm a massive fan of crime and we are fans of whiskey, so what's not to love with that? That was so cool he reached out and
Exactly. I wonder if he heard when I mentioned that story ages ago when my sister-in-law's great-great-grandfather actually died by falling into a mash tun at Lafroig.
And there was some potential suspicious circumstances afoot. Yeah.
That sounds cool.
So all the best with your book.
Raise a glass and stick your nose in it.
So today we are using 3 types of glassware: Glencairn glass, Norlan glass, and short-stemmed snifter glass similar to Copita. Before the Glencairn glass, the whiskey world actually didn't have any glasses to call its own. This glass is crystal clear to show off the color of your whiskey, and the shape of the glass is designed to enhance the overall experience from start to finish as you nose and taste your whiskey. I guess most people would know what it looks like, but if you don't, it's kind of like a tulip-shaped glass almost.
If in doubt, look at our Whisky Sisters logo.
Oh yeah, good call, good call.
Our little drams on fire are pretty much Glencairn shaped, aren't they?
Yeah, so we will start with the Glencairn and compare the tasting notes using the other 2 glasses afterwards. So we compare it against the Glencairn glass. And the good thing about Glencairn glass is that it's very cheap. Like it's only about £6. So I think that's fairly priced.
Do we think they're accessible all over the world, Glencairns?
Yeah, for sure.
Good.
Definitely.
Our second glass will be the Norlan glass, which is a double-walled whisky glass developed to elevate your favourite whisky, whether Scotch, bourbon, rye, Canadian, Japanese, you name it. The Norlan whisky glass has been designed to capture whisky's unique aromatics and flavours and deliver them to the senses like never before. Designed in 2015 by co-founder Shuli Reicht, the glass was further refined with the help of legendary master distiller Jim McEwen on Scotland's Isle of Islay. Norlan glasses are made from hand-blown, double-walled borosilicate glass.
Anyway.
By double-walled funky glass, which is the same durable material Pyrex uses to make its laboratory glassware. Borosilicate is harder to say, but it's also harder than regular glass and won't crack when boiling water is poured on it. The outer wall tumbler encases a nosing glass, preventing your hand from warming up the spirit. The glass is light, it only weighs 125 grams. It's more expensive in the UK, averaging £48.
Quite a difference.
Pricey.
And the third one we are using today is kind of a snifter with the rounded Copita bowl. And the rounded bowl lets you swirl the contents of the glass to release aromas. These aromas are then directed up the narrowing shape to your nose. And the foot gives a convenient place to hold the glass without affecting the temperature. Basically, it's like a wine glass stem. And Copita glasses are more commonly used in Spanish sherry industry. And that's why the name Copita, which is Spanish word for glass. The glass was repurposed for other drinks, from wine to spirits, and it used to be known as the dock glass in the 16th and the 17th century, as it was a glass used for nosing wine and spirits directly from the barrel when they arrived at the dock to see whether they wanted to buy the contents. Big thing with the Copita is the nose, basically. The small opening, which will be the smallest opening of all these 3 glasses, is supposed to concentrate the smells, which will also enhance the taste for the better or for worse. So let's see how this tasting actually goes.
Dram on fire.
In 2019, the Whisky Cellar, an independent bottler, acquired the rights to the Brig brand from Edrington. The brand was established back in 1896 as the original house blend of wines and spirits merchant and grocer Matthew Gloag and Son. It was created in the basement of a shop at 20 to 24 Athol Street in Perth in Scotland, and it was a popular blend through the early 1900s but eventually lost favour to its follow-up whisky, the famous Grouse. Currently, the Whisky Cellar has released 2 whiskies under this label, and we are reviewing the first one, the 14-year-old Brig Old Highland-style blended Scotch, made using Highland whiskies aged in a selection of ex-bourbon barrels, most of which are first fill, and a small proportion of ex-sherry butts. The malt content was uncommonly high, more than 50% in this inaugural release.
Yes, and I think if I remember right, I don't have the bottle with me right here. Do you have the bottle? Is it 46.7% ABV?
Hang on, it's small type and my eyesight's deteriorating.
I think it's reasonably high ABV, which is quite nice.
46.7, you're correct.
Yes. Woo. I think let's go through using the Glencairn and see how we find that and then compare the other two. So,
good shout.
What would you say about the color?
I'd say it's kind of like goldeny. That's a boring description, but kind of goldeny amber. What about you?
Yeah, it's quite dark, like a darker
golden.
Yeah, or dark honey maybe.
What did you get in the nose for this on the Glencairn?
I was thinking rum and raisin ice cream, or that kind of, rum-soaked raisins.
Nice.
There's definitely some leather there, some honey, blackcurrant leaves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've smelled those.
We used to have loads of blackcurrant bushes at home, like in our garden.
Are they quite a strong smell or subtle smell?
Yeah, it's very similar to, blackcurrants, how you'd imagine blackcurrants smelling, but maybe a little bit more like greener, slightly earthier maybe. I don't know. They smell really fresh and fragrant, like nice kind of perfumed.
Gorgeous. I love that.
Yeah, and then I was getting a little bit of some cookie dough, maybe with some cinnamon in there.
If I heard those notes, I'd be wanting to dive right into that dram. For me, with the Glencairn, I get kind of a malty kind of biscuitish immediately. Then a bit of lemon zest was quite citrusy for me. And then I was getting, set honey, the thick honey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So set honey on white bloomer bread with butter. So buttery, bready, set honey.
I love that honey as well. I would just spoon it in.
I think it's a lesser popular honey. A lot of people don't like it, but I like it. When it had been in the glass a little bit longer, almost like a hazelnut syrup.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of like a peanut butter, but it's more like a hazelnut
butter.
I'm definitely getting it now. But I think when you mentioned that kind of more citrusy tones, it could be linked to similar to what I was thinking with the leaves.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a bit more fresher or something in there.
Yeah, because I've got kind of lemon zesty.
But it does get sweeter after a while, doesn't it?
Definitely, for sure. What about the palate for you? I'm intrigued because I was like, I don't know what I'm tasting here. But anyway, let's compare notes.
I was getting a lot of red berries. Red fruits, red berries, plenty of that. And there was some spiciness, but more like sweeter baking spices, such as cinnamon, for example.
Oh, nice. Mine are quite different, but I'm aware I've not eaten much today. And I know all of these things impact and affect, don't you? For me, I was getting, again, bready, but this time that wholemeal seeded bread, almost like nutty on the top crust.
Now that you mentioned that, and I just took a sip, and I can totally relate to that.
You can,
with like sesame seeds and
all that funky stuff on the top, and mildly aniseedy, not too strong, slight white pepper, and a slight sour lemon sponge. So sweet, but again, that citrus following through on the palate for me.
Yeah, good to aniseed be cumin. I was thinking of cumin earlier as well when I was thinking about the spices.
For sure. I like that. I really like the finish, probably more than the taste.
Oh, wow. Why?
I don't know. It's just like, this is nice in the palate. But then when I'm allowing the lingering finish, I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice.
It's medium to long, isn't it, really?
Yes. And again, I got nice kind of crust of home-baked bread, but again, a citrusy. So that theme was throughout, the whole shebang for me. What about you in the finish?
Oh, I thought it was a bit more woody and definitely some sort of sweet cinnamon in there. It was weird because it was kind of sweet, but also oaky. Quite nice mouthfeel. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, we go to the next class now. How different was this?
Like night and day.
Wow, like this Norlan glass has much bigger opening, so obviously the nosing is very different. You really had to search for it. I wasn't getting any rum and raisin at all. It wasn't that sweet. It was much more leathery for me. Even had a little bit of that kind of alcoholic whiff. But then maybe getting a little bit those red berries that I was getting on the palate before, but now on the nose.
Ah, okay.
But you really have to stick your nose in the glass with this one, don't you?
I've written struggled to get aromas. I actually could hardly smell anything at first. It took me ages.
Yeah.
I could get a gentle honey, but it didn't feel as defined as before. Whereas I was going, oh, it's like the set honey. It didn't feel like that. I couldn't get any citrus at all. Whereas with the Glencairn, that had been really prominent. I'm going back to it now. I can get that similar kind of hazelnut syrup, but only now it's been in the glass and I'm returning to it. That's all I had got previously.
I don't get that now. I'm just nosing at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Maybe getting something like a more floral honey. Definitely not the set one.
Yeah, that kind of blossomy one or whatever. I can get some
Maybe-
similar notes if I practically put my whole half my face in the
Yeah.
glass.
Exactly. That's what I'm just doing. Like you really have to.
I'm steaming up my glasses as we speak.
Yeah. So on the palate, I have to say, I hate sipping from this glass. It's so
Okay.
thick. The rim is so thick. You basically have the tasting glass inside, and then you have this outer layer protecting the tasting glass. So you don't warm it up with your hands, but it creates a really thick rim. It's really hard to sip from.
I completely agree. I've written too thick. I'm like, it's like drinking out of half a glass bottle. I can't control my mouth. I kind of almost like spilled it a bit.
Yeah.
It felt like stingy alcohol-y. And then, like your inside lippy gum on the inside. I felt that the whiskey was all swirling about there. It
Yeah.
felt like,
I felt like I was getting like a, when you get a milk mustache, but like a whiskey
Yeah.
one.
I was floundering with this glass.
I know. It's just not a good one.
No, it's not. I'd be interested. Oh, sugar, I've just spilled from the damn thing. I can't even, my spatial awareness is gone because the rim is so thick.
I
Okay.
know. Even the palate was very different. So I was getting much more of the red fruits, like really elevated tasting notes of those, but also felt kind of slightly alcoholic, like felt stronger. I was getting a little bit of more like caramel sweetness and much more oakiness on the palate.
That's interesting. It was certainly really different on the palate for me. My experience to yours on the palate different, however. I agree, for me, more alcohol-y. All I got was aniseedy and sour. But I think I was struggling so much with feeling it was like going everywhere and all that. I was distracted by that as well. And I wasn't enjoying the drinking experience. So I didn't stick with it for long.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does feel a bit more harsh on the palate, and on the finish again, and getting a little bit of sweetness, like toffee sweetness, but it's quite woody. But I really don't enjoy drinking from this glass at all.
Yeah, I think I might even prefer from a mug more than this.
Yeah, even the rim of a mug would be smaller than that.
Yeah, because you would have the handle with a mug.
My brother-in-law gifted me this glass, so if you're listening, I'm really sorry, but I hate it.
Yeah, and that was such a generous gift if they're so pricey. This isn't mine. I borrowed this one. Quite glad it's not mine. I don't think we're getting a job as reps for Norlan anytime
No,
soon.
actually, I'm just going to pour this whiskey back into my Glencairn.
I think as well, I really would like to invite people with different experiences, because I remember we posted a reel way back with a Norlan glass, and I remember somebody commenting so enthusiastically, is that kind of glass? I love it, etc. So it'd be good to hear the different opinions. It's definitely not for me. I did get a slight kind of bready finish similar to the Glencairn. It wasn't similar, but there was something kind
reminiscent.
Exactly, thank you. Yeah, but I felt, gosh, that's quite a shame because I didn't enjoy the whiskey from it.
Yeah, I know, and it's so expensive. I don't know. Glassware is a massive part of your drinking experience anyway. Even just how it feels in your hand and things like that really matter.
Yeah,
and of course, it's depends on the person, but I just don't think it does much good for the whiskey.
Is yours quite wide? Mine seems quite wide.
Yeah.
Hold. So I've got an average size hand. But it just feels a bit like cumbersome to me.
Yeah, well, they are individually blown, so there might be some differences in the glasses as well, individual level. Because it's also so light, I don't think I like the lightness so much either. I'm sorry, this is just turning into like this Norlan glass, but I do like heavy base tumblers and heavier glasses. And even with like Glencairn, they do have that heavier base, don't they? So it does
Yeah.
feel nicer in your hand. But anyway,
But it's interesting how different the dram is, isn't it?
oh my God, if I would try that whiskey from the Norlan glass, I don't know. Anyway, let's move on.
Whiskey bitches.
Copita glass has the smallest opening of all these. So this is like a lot of industry people would use this as their nosing glass or when they try the whiskey first time. How did you find the nose? Was it much more elevated? Did you get much more?
No, it wasn't more elevated for me. I know you don't need to actually stick your nose in the glass, but I think I kind of like to get in about the glass. So I felt this glass kind of impedes my sniff. So I've got for the Glencairn nose accessible, and this one impedes my sniff. And the Norlan, I had to nosedive. My nose didn't like the smaller one, right? But I do drink from these. I got the same notes, maybe not as zesty lemon puff biscuit. I got kind of honey, but less buttery, but that was kind of it. So I felt similar notes, but maybe not. It was a wee bit harder for me to ascertain what they were.
All right. Well, I was getting lots more dried fruits.
Okay.
Not so much the rum soaked raisins, but just general dried fruits, like a mixed bag, like kind of that what you'd normally get from sherry influenced whiskies. Old leather again, maybe slightly stronger than the previous one or the first one.
Okay.
I was getting a bit more like an old woody smell. I don't know, that it wasn't like oaky, but like an old, I don't know, maybe it's just like a fusty room with old tables that they have like a couple of chips or that they kind of battered,
like worn wooden furniture would.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And it maybe been in the same room with some leather couches or something. Then maraschino cherries or some sort of dark cherries, but also maybe the maraschino ones that have been soaked in the syrup in the wine.
Sounds like you got loads from this shape of glass.
I do think that, I don't know if it was just because I knew, because that it's a snifter, it's really aimed for the aromas. So I don't know if I was just trying really detect maybe even more.
Yeah.
I was also getting salted toffee, really nice on the nose.
What was your experience on the palate for this glass?
I think it was fine. Nice tasting notes, definitely. Drinking from it, it's a little bit weird because it's so small. The opening is quite small.
Sure, yeah.
You just have to like tilt your head a little bit more. Yeah, I find it sweeter, loads of salted, like chewy kind of toffee, that sticks to your teeth. Cashew nuts in there. It did feel a little bit more spicier and more warming than the other two.
I'm having a wee sip just now. Really hear you on the cashews. That's a good creamy call. I found similar notes that I did with the Glencairn. Maybe the aniseediness was a bit stronger. The pepperiness I'd got with the Glencairn was a wee bit stronger as well. A lemon cakiness again. Didn't get my wholemeal nutty seedy bread on this one. And similar finish, but not as citrusy on the finish. So those two, the Glencairn and this one, were certainly the most similar for me.
Yeah, I thought the finish felt drying on this one. I don't know if it's because it's the last one or is it just the glass, or I don't know. Or maybe it's just how you're taking all the aromas and then it changes your palate. But I find it slightly more drying. Imagine like eating grape skin. That kind of little bit tannin maybe.
I thought there would be some differences, but I didn't think the differences would be as great.
Yeah, even the finish with this glass, I feel like feels longer in a weird, like how is that even possible?
Yeah, I know. How is it possible?
So which glass did you prefer?
Glencairn, what about you?
I know, it's just such a good glass.
It's a good glass.
I don't mind the copies. I do kind of like glasses with stem.
Yeah.
Like sometimes some places have almost like a Glencairn, but with the long stem. That's quite cool. I quite like that.
They're good. So, in the Norlan's a strong no.
Yes. And also, I think I've got to mention before, so these kind of snifter glasses, Copita glasses, cost around the same as Glencairn. There's quite a difference between these ones and the Norlan glass. Also, I was wondering, we had some similarities, but slightly different ones. I thought maybe I should point out that my bottle has been open for some time.
Okay.
When did you open yours?
I opened mine today.
Okay, so yeah, it might be something to do with that. Anyway, it's interesting.
I might do this experiment again with some other whiskies. So, Inka, what do you think of Brig Up Earth, this blended Scotch whisky?
Quite surprised because blended Scotch is not something I drink very often, so I really did enjoy it. I actually enjoyed it the first time as well when we tried it last year. It's surprisingly complex and really nice, smooth mouthfeel, so it was very good. And I actually had a look online in case anyone's interested to try. There's still some bottles left at Aberdeen Whisky Shop and Top Whiskies.
Nice. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was nice. Different drinking experience when we were in France together that we did that Instagram live on. But again, it was warm. We were outside. We were trying it with ice to experiment with. So it just again shows me how different your drinking experience can be depending on where you are as well. But a definite easy sipper.
It comes at a very good price point. I think it's about £45. Worth a try. But let us know. Anyway, your thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts.
Whisky Sisters Whisky Fact.
So what's the deal with seasoning the oak? The chemical and physical differences are significant when it comes to American oak and French oak, for example. American oak is far higher in lactones than French oak. And these are volatile, highly aromatic compounds which impart strong sweet notes such as coconut and vanilla. French oak has far higher concentration of elagitannins, compounds which contribute structure and mouthfeel to a beverage. So when a tree is felled and the quarter-sawn lumber arrives at the cooperage, it must first be dried out. Seasoning is the practice of treating the freshly cut oak so that it loses excess humidity and softens the more astringent character of its elagitannins. Difficult words today.
Difficult words, big word day. The best form of seasoning is to leave those fresh staves outside, exposed to the elements, from a few months to years, even as many as 5 years, depending on the oak species, its moisture content and its future use. During that time, not only are the harsher, more astringent and less pleasant compounds almost literally washed away, but the slow process of air drying reduces the woody aromas and increases aromatic compounds such as toasty spices and vanillin. It also prevents cracking and splitting, which is super important.
And not all oak is air seasoned though. Some distillers choose to work with casks which have been kiln dried only. The oak is heated in a kiln at 50 degrees Celsius for a month. And at the more industrial American cooperage, this is exactly what happens. The disadvantage is that those unpleasant elements are not fully broken down, with bitterness and harsher tannins remaining in the oak. Regardless of the seasoning approach, once the oak is dry, it can be cut and shaped.
There you go. Whisky fact right there for you.
You've been listening to the Whisky Sisters podcast.
So next week we are celebrating International Women's Day and we have a special guest to chat about all things Welsh whisky. Yaki da!
Yes, in fact, there will be 2 guest appearances and we are sampling several Welsh drams and see what the fuss is all about. But while you wait, feel free to go and follow us on Instagram at whiskysisters.podcast, Twitter at Whisky Sisters, and Facebook at Whisky Sisters Podcast.
We eventually got over those 2,000 followers on Instagram. Whew.
Finally, yay! Thank you.
Okay, Anka, have a good week. See you next time. Bye, listeners.
Bye.
May your glass be full and your dram on fire.